Okay, so good morning. Good morning to all. Uh,
Good morning, miss.
what about the one, Samuel, right? Already I'm taking class late. How are you all?
Fine, miss.
Okay, miss.
Shall we start now?
Yeah, sure, miss.
Okay, any doubts in the shoulder joint mobilization? Okay, this one we already talked about this distraction, right? So the first thing, like whenever you meet patient, the first day of consultation, like after deciding that you are going to do mobilization, you need to do distraction. Distraction means increasing the joint space. We already know that, but it is this glenohumeral distraction has 3 grades. Okay, distraction means just you are increasing the space between the joint surface. So this thing is, it's already there in the Caroline Kishner. If you observe this, like on this one, we have like for distraction, we have 3 grades. Okay, grade 1 is just loosen or it is a small amplitude. We are not doing actually distraction. Very small amplitude means we are not pushing it to the limit. Okay, so just distracting it to the where no stress is placed, you feel that it is relaxed. That's what the grade 1, or loosen the tissues. Okay, whenever you do distraction, it should be given in such a way that it's a small amplitude distraction, but there is no stress or no pain or no tight, no stretch feeling to be feel around the soft tissues. That is what grade 1. Okay, and then we are proceeding to grade 2. Grade 2 means it's simply taking up the slack. Means you feel that the tissues around the joint, like capsules, ligaments, everything, you feel some kind of resistance. Okay, so you are going to the barrier. For example, if I'm taking just for example, MCP of index finger. Okay, so just you are giving some mild force, small amplitude distraction, right? That is grade 1. Grade 2 is you are just going to the limit. Okay, so you feel that there is a stretch around the muscle, little bit increased thing. So everything, all the tissues, all the soft tissues around the joint should feel tightened, or it is like everything is taken up. Loosened structures are going to the limit of stretching. That's what we call it, taking up the slack. What I'm saying is actually, for example, I'm telling you, this is normally take it as a soft tissues or anything. So if it is relaxed and you're just giving it a loosening effect, this is grade 1. Okay, grade 2 means your loosened one is getting tightened. Okay, you are giving some tightness to the tissues, means it's a grade 2. Okay, and then increase the distraction force. That is grade 3. Grade 3 means this is grade 1, and then you are giving it grade 2, and then this is grade 3. You are giving a stretch force. That is, you are crossing the barrier, or you are crossing the resistance limit. Then we call it grade 3. Okay, so this is the distraction, or how to say that, the other name for that is distraction. Means you all understand. I think you all know what is distraction. Means increasing the joint space. So it has three grades. Grade 1 means loosen that, or grade 2 is tighten, and then grade 3 means we are distracting to the limit that it feels stretched to the muscle, or the patient feels some kind of stretching effect. Okay, this is what 3 grades are there, and oscillations are different. Okay, here this one is sustained. You all have to understand the thing. All the distraction forces should be sustained. Sustained means you don't do oscillations. There is no to and fro movements. You're just going to the limit, and then position there for a few seconds and then relax. Okay, so sustain means that is the meaning. You are going, you don't have to do that oscillations, rapid to and fro oscillation or slow oscillations. It is nothing. We are just doing distraction. That is also in the 3 grades. Grade 1 loosen, grade 2 tighten or slacken up. Slacken up means there is no loosening, or there is no wavery pattern. Everything is in the straight line. That's what we call it, grade 2, or slacken up the tissues. And then grade 3 is we are giving some barrier, crossing the barrier. Okay, this is grade 3. This is what this distractions as 3 grades. Okay, so grade 1 and grade 2, and then grade 3 is going to the barrier. So what is this tissue resistance and anatomical limit means? For example, I'm telling you, take for example my wrist joint. Okay, so this is my normal active range of motion. Okay, this is normal active range of motion. After that, I can do, this limit is called my physiological, anatomical limit or anatomical barrier. Can you see that? This is my normal active range of motion. After that, this is the limit, very narrow space. We have very narrow space between physiological barrier and anatomical barrier. Okay, or tissue resistance to anatomical limit. We have very small space, but we have that. So if you are going to that barrier, we are going to that end limit. Okay, after that, if you push further that, then you have ligament rupture, or some type of injuries may be common. Okay, so there is a difference between that. After a specific point, we have some space would be there. That's what we call it, anatomical barrier, anatomical limit, everything. After that, we cannot proceed further. Then it may lead to injury. Okay, this is what normally distraction grades. And other thing is, this one we already discussed. This is for oscillations. Oscillations, we have 4 grades. Okay, grade 1 is small amplitude movement. Small amplitude to and fro movements in the beginning of the range. Okay, so, and then 2 is like a large amplitude, but it shouldn't go for the tissue limit. Okay, so in between that, we are not going for the barrier. And then 3 is also large amplitude, and we are doing oscillations up to the limit of available motion. Okay, it touches the barrier. Just it touches the barrier. Okay, so, and then the 4 is a small amplitude rhythmic oscillation. Okay, small amplitude rhythmic oscillations, and it is at the end range. That is, you are crossing the barrier. You are stressing that force into the tissue resistance. This is what oscillations. We need to know the differences. There are 2 types of techniques. One is oscillation technique, other one is distraction. So before going for any oscillation technique, you need to do distraction. That is also, we have 3 grades. So in the beginning, or in the initial stage, or in the first day or second day of treatment, always give grade 2 distraction. Okay, before going to any type of oscillation, you need to do grade 2 distraction, and then proceed with whatever is suitable for the patient. It can be varied. We already know that. Grade 1 for purely for pain. Okay, pain and muscle spasm. Grade 1 and grade 2 for mainly pain and muscle spasm. We need to choose this. whatever the patient situation is, if he is complaining of muscle spasm or pain would be there, means you choose this 2 grades. Okay, but further than that, if it is like stiffness, purely it is a kind of your joint adhesion, and if the joint is not allowing the further movement and all, then you can go for grade 3 and 4. So like purely it's a stiffness and no pain, means go for grade 4. Okay, grade 3, maybe pain is also moderate and stiffness is also there, means we can choose grade 3. Okay, it is we can choose it according to the patient's condition and the prognosis. Everything will tell you which grade we need to do. And grade 4, normally we don't use it if you're well expertised or well thoroughly, because it's a high velocity movements, so it may cause some kind of pain, as well as sometimes it may cause damage to your tissues. So normally we don't prefer grade 5. Okay, in extreme cases, or if they are experienced for 20 years 25 years, then they may go for that. Otherwise we need to be safe with this 4 grades. Okay, so this is the grades for distraction and oscillations. So now you understand that graded oscillations means it's just on that to and fro that mobilizations. And then distraction means we call it sustained grades. So mostly we go for grade 2. Grade 2 in the beginning, and then if it is possible, the pain is reduced and it is tissues are strong, means we can go for grade 3 distraction also. Okay, so that's why I told you glenohumeral distractions, the initial treatment, we have to give this distraction kind of thing, that is sustained grade 2. That's what I told you. Loosen up the taken up the slack or loosen up the slack. So all the fibers should be in, it is not in full stretch or it is not in full relaxed. That stage is called grade 2. And then if it is pain, for reducing the pain and all, you can go for grade 1 or 2 oscillation. So here also, to pain control means we can go for this in the distraction itself, we can go for grade 1 or 2 oscillations. It is not sustained. We are giving some kind of to and fro movements. So we already discussed this. What is glenohumeral distraction? What is anterior glide? What is posterior glide? What is caudal glide? Right? And then we, like at the first day, we need to start in the resting position. Am I right? It's a comfortable and loosened one. So you can choose this kind of resting positions or loose packed position. That is, we all have, you need to know for all the joints, we have loose packed position and resting position. So initially, loose packed positions means the ligaments, capsules, everything is like a completely relaxed position. Why we don't allow the loose packed position means, in the beginning, we don't know how much the joint is stable. Sometimes without the ligaments intact or without the integrity of the soft tissues, you may have dislocation or you may pull out the joints. So here you can see that that's why choosing the position should be resting position. Resting position means that soft tissues are intact and it is not too relaxed. So that is the situation we want in the initial stages. So always start with resting position and then progress it to the pain limit. Okay, what I'm saying is maybe in the first day patient comes to you with only 30° of abduction. Just say only 30° abduction is allowed for him, or after that it is pain or stiffness, whatever it is, that may interrupt the completion of movement. Let's say, for example, I'm telling you. So after that, what I'm saying is, so in the first day or second day of treatment, choose the resting position of shoulder joint, that is frontal plane, that is in the scapular plane. You choose that, and then progress it after some kind of glides, oscillations, and distractions, whatever it is. After that, you need to progress it. We cannot retain the same 30°. You want to achieve it to 180, right? The last end range is 180. Just for example, for this patient, it is 180, means you need to achieve that. So maybe the 4th day or 5th day of treatment, we are going to progress it, right? We cannot stay in 30°. So for that, maybe 5th day, if you are progressing, that's what we call it, the progression of movements. Is it clear? So here, everything is in the initial treatment, all in resting position, all the glides, anterior glide, posterior glide, caudal glide, distraction, right? After that, these are all progression, means after improvement, after some kind of degree achievements, how we proceed. That's what it is. So this is all 9. Just for example, they are saying 90° achieved. Okay, after resting position, caudal glide, they achieved abduction to 90°. Maybe 120° achieved, means what you have to do is your hand placement, everything is same, but the patient's limb should be in this direction, right? 120, the arm comes to 120. So you need to place little bit like more of downward direction. You need to face the patient's head. This is like more of crosswords, right? So the direction is this way. But after 120°, you need to little bit go backwards. Okay. So this is what progression is. You don't get confused with what is progression and all. Initially, maybe they have more restriction. That time we are talking about the first things. Okay, caudal glide. What is caudal glide? What is the posterior glide? What is anterior glide? After that, the progression, the name progression is there, means what it indicates means after improvement, after some improvements, how you need to position the patient. For caudal glide, okay. So the caudal glide in resting position, this one. Okay, you can see the patient's position as well as therapist position. Okay, therapist is by the side of the patient in the resting position of caudal glide. And after that, the caudal glide progression, he is crossing little more of like 45° angle to the patient's body. So this is what nothing, you don't get confused. Caudal glide probably after improvement, how your placement should be. That is what. Okay. So this is like elevation beyond 90°. So if it is like 90 means you are progressing it in this way. And then after 90°, if you're improving, that means we call it abduction through elevation, right? So for that, what is your thing means? That's what I told you. In the supine lying, you should more of posterior. You are more turning towards the patient's head, like that. This is the angle. After 90°, your position, the position of the therapist should be altered. Thereby, it is convenient for you as well as patient. And one more thing I already told you, for after 90° of abduction, you need to do lateral rotation. Along with the lateral rotation only, you can achieve abduction. Otherwise, it is like, what to say? It is not, it may cause some other problems. Like impingement issues may arise. Okay, impingement issues means your head of humerus may get compressed on the coracoacromial arch, supraspinatus tendon, everything is there. That's why anatomically we need to do lateral rotation, then only you can achieve the normal full range. Okay, so this one you need to remember. Whenever you are doing elevation through abduction, always do lateral rotation. So can you see that his thumb is placed outwards, right? If it is placed outwards, then it is external rotation. So if he is facing towards me or towards us, means then it indicates that the person is performing medial rotation. Is it clear? So we don't want abduction through elevation in medial rotation. That may cause some other problems. Maybe your technique may cause some other side effects to patients. That's what I told you, subacromial impingement, this kind of problems may arise. Okay, so that's what you need to do. The important thing that need to be remembered is lateral rotation. And whenever you are doing abduction 90 degree, in that thing, it won't be it is not a direct inferior glide. When you look at this, it is inferior and anterior direction. The direction of arrow tells you that it is not perfect inferior direction. It's a somewhat inferior and anterior one. Okay, so whenever you are doing most commonly, the patients will come in this range. After 90, they have problem with till 90 degrees, it's safe. They won't have much issues. Maybe 90% of cases that I have seen, now for 90 degrees, they won't have any issues. After that, maybe when they are progressing at 120 or 140, that range only, they find it pain. So always learn this technique. Initially, this is the hand placement. In the supine lying also, you can try this. Same thing, but the direction is not purely inferior glide. It is somewhat anterior-inferior direction. The glide is in this way. In the supine lying also, imagine the same way. It should be comes as an inferior and somewhat anterior direction. Okay, this is for posterior glide progression, maybe reaching 90, and after 90, what is the posterior glides placement means? Okay, this one. This is posterior glide in the initial thing means you have to sorry. Posterior glide means supine lying and then you're thrusting backwards. That's what like in the resting position means abducted to 55 degree or adducted, and then that is in the plane of scapula, that is frontal plane. You're choosing that, and after that when you're progressing, it means it should be like that. So flexed 90 degree and internally rotated and elbow flexed, and then you give posterior glide. Can you see the difference? Normally it should be in this direction. The arm is placed in this way, and then you are giving a posterior glide. The arm should be like abducted, elbow extended. In this way it should be, and you are giving some backward glide. But here we are changing it. So after improvement, after the progression and all, we can go for this way. Okay, and along with that, if you're using belt, means you don't have to give distraction force. Okay, we are concentrate purely on just backward glide. We can avoid this distraction by just pushing your hip backwards. That way it creates distraction. Okay, so you're using your trunk or your body weight also in creating that joint space. Okay, so grade 2 distraction or grade 3 distraction, and then give some backward glides. This is not that effective because one hand is used. So this is progression of posterior glide. Okay, remember that posterior glide is used for small. Why we are using the posterior glide? Can you hear me?
Yes, miss.
Okay, what is the use for posterior glide?
Joint play for internal rotation.
For pardon? For
Increase joint play for.
flexion and internal rotation. Am I right?
Yes, miss.
Okay, very good. I think you are with me. Right? So this is for progression. If you want to increase the internal rotation to further degrees or to increase the flexion, you need to choose this one. Caudal glide is purely for abduction. Abduction and only abduction. Okay, this is for anterior glide. So for anterior glide, please make sure that you place a pad or some support under the shoulder joint or acromion process. Okay, thereby it doesn't cause discomfort, as well as it provides some better stabilization. For both the things, you need to provide some kind of pad support. So anterior glide, the main use is extension. This two range of motion, this degrees of freedom are extremely affected in most of the shoulder joint problems. You have these two things get affected. Always they complain that they won't go, like their hand shouldn't go back, or they won't uh, touch their hand back pocket. This is the common complaint we get. Okay, so for this thing, it is very useful. Anterior glides are a very, very effective one. Okay, so and one more thing, just ask them whether it is convenient for them. Don't think about your convenience or your comfortability. Ask them about whether they manage it for maybe 10 minutes of treatment, whether they can be positioned in prone lying. Is it okay for them? Means you can proceed with that. Otherwise, mostly elderly people, they won't be that comfortable in prone lying. This is a common complaint we have. So in that case, you have to choose either side lying, or in the supine lying itself, you try to do that. But this is more convenient for us compared to other thing, because either way the whole patient's arm is supported on your thighs. That is one thing. You don't have to lift the whole weight. And other one is you are doing pushing way. Okay, the pushing type of force is easy compared to pulling kind of thing, because pulling needs more muscle force for our hand muscles or get strained easily whenever you are doing pulling. Pushing is little bit easy. Okay, so that is a problem here. So always anterior and somewhat medial. Your force should come like this is the direction. Can you see the hand placement? So it is mixed of anterior and slightly medial. you need to position like walk stance. Walk stance is more effective as well as more of economical for us. Okay, after that, this one I told you I will left it to later class. So what does that means? So the anterior glide is so glenohumeral anterior glide is useful for both extension and to increase external rotation. So in this thing, to increase the external rotation, we need some kind of 2 ways you can do that. Okay, for extension you can use this way, but for external rotation you have like 2 types of improvement. You can achieve the progression through 2 ways. One is distraction progression, other one is elevation progression. Okay, this is the 2 types of progression you can for, because the external rotation is a very common one that get affected, and you need to give your hard work. Like we get strained or you feel tired after treating any kind of external rotation disability. We are the one who suffers a lot. So for this, I told you one more precaution you need to apply whenever we are improving the external rotation is, if you apply the anterior glide, is it clear? Whenever we apply anterior glide with the humerus in the externally rotated, for example, I can do like 10 degree or 20 degrees of external rotation. And then if I apply the anterior glide, what it causes means it causes anterior dislocation. Okay, can you see that? This is a more common, like throwers, most of the players who are doing that throwing movements and all, they get this type of dislocation, that is anterior dislocation. You can see that abduction to 90 degree and lateral rotation. If you combine that, there is a greater chance for dislocation. That is anteriorly it may dislocate. So that is what we are doing actually for improving the external rotation. We are indirectly doing an external rotation. Along with that, we are giving anterior glide. So in that way, there is a greater chance for subluxation or dislocation. To avoid that, we can use some kind of these 2 techniques. Just distraction. Okay, so distraction technique means we are just increasing the joint space, but we are by the side of the, like the limb should be by the side of the patient, and you're just increasing the joint space and then rotating it. Okay, that is one technique. It is also safe. Another one is elevation progression. This one is for like maybe they have end range external rotation difficulties. Means you can use that elevation progression. That is nothing but this one. Okay, in the same way, we are doing the mobilization. Means it is elevation through progression. Okay, we are already doing a lateral rotation. Is it clear? In the after 90 degrees of abduction range, that is caudal glide, what we are doing means we are combining the external rotation. Along with that, we are doing. So in the same way, you can go for improving the external rotation. We don't want abduction 90 degree and lateral rotation. That will cause, like whenever you maintain that position and give an anterior glide, means it will give, and there is a great chance for anterior dislocation. Okay, so remember that we don't want that kind of thing. 2 precautions I already told you. One is for anterior glide, the pad support. Okay, pad support, it's like 3 way it is beneficial. One is for prevent that discomfort. Another one is your stabilize the acromion. And third one is we are protecting the important neurovascular structures like brachial plexus, some arteries, brachial arteries, everything gets emerged. So whenever you apply pressure, that may cause some kind of compressions. So this is one precaution I told you. Another one is whenever we do abduction, it should be lateral. After 90 degree, it should be laterally rotated. Thereby we are preventing subacromial impingement, right? So next one is For external rotation also, normally if you are giving anterior glide, I told you it will improve the extension as well as external rotation. But if you are going for progression in abduction 90 degree, and then if you are giving too much of external rotation force, that may cause like using anterior glide. Anterior glide in abduction 90 degree and a lateral rotation may cause anterior dislocation. Very common. Okay, so to avoid that, we can give two ways. One is distraction progression and elevation progression. So without doing any abduction or everything, arm is by the side itself. Arm is just by the side of the patient, and you are giving distraction and creating lateral rotation. This is called distraction progression. Okay, it's not a by the it is not like by the side of the patient. It is in resting position always. If you are not following any pain relieving positions, means use resting positions. That is safe. Okay, so distraction progression is maintain the position in resting position, and then externally rotate the humerus to end range. End range means whatever it is available for that patient. We are talking about end range of the patient, not for like end range means we will go completely, your thumb may go backward. That is what our complete external rotation. But sometimes that is not the end range for, otherwise they won't come to you, right? So only whatever available to that patient, you are going to that limit, and then apply a grade 3 distraction. So here you can see that for external rotation progression, grade 3 distraction means what you feel like you feel stretch around the soft tissues. The patient can feel that there is some kind of stretch forces happening around the soft tissues. Okay, so this is what they feel. You need to give little more force. Always safer is this one. For external rotation improvement, distraction progression is more effective compared to elevation progression. Okay. And after that, this one, acromioclavicular, everything is just palpate the joint and then just give the one segment. One segment is stabilized, and then give the slides or glides, whatever it is. So sitting or supine lying, either way we can give it. So for example, if it is supine lying means ask them to be by the side of the, like by the edge of the couch. Okay, you ask them to come to the extreme corner, and then you can apply it. It is little bit easy for us. So sitting or if it is, if in case the prone lying, mostly I won't allow prone lying for elderly people. Okay, whether they like it or not, avoid it. So maximum try it with try it in the supine lying or sitting. So if in the examiner also, in case if they ask you, means you can just explain to them, because it is not convenient for them, like that we can talk it. That is not a big blunder. If you are like the case scenario says that the patient is 70 years old and you are just like that, like normal practical procedure, if you make them in prone lying, it won't be that it is not that good for treating the patient. So with the patient sitting, if it is easy, sitting means no problem. With the patient sitting and stand, because for anterior glide, I always told you that pushing kind of thing is easy for us compared to pulling force. Okay, so for pushing, you need, for anterior glide and all, you can stand behind the patient. And then for with one hand, you can stabilize the acromion process. Okay, acromion process. Okay, so how they are using it means like with the fingers, they are stabilizing the acromion process. And then the thumb of your other hand pushes downward through the upper trapezius. So after all the stabilization, you need to give the clavicle some kind of anterior glides. Okay, everything we have seen in the video itself, right? So it is not the rule that you have to follow or you have to write it in the same way. How you are understanding, like you can paraphrase it to yourself, like how much you can capable of understanding the techniques and the practical aspects in the same way. You can apply it if you watch the video, and then whichever is convenient to you, like how like it is not a strict rule for practical aspects. I'm telling you, for practical things and all, you can write it on your own, but only thing is the technique should be correct. Always whenever you are if it is engage people, and if you are doing prone like if you are giving prone lying as a position, then the pad support should be given on the patient's acromion process. Okay, this is for a C glide, posterior and superior glide. So whenever there is a depression is restricted. Depression is restricted means depression means this one. Your shoulder girdle is hanging downwards. Okay, so if it is there means it is because of a lack of superior glide of your SC joint. The clavicle is not moving upwards. Okay, for depression it should move upward. For that you have to give some superior glides. Superior glides for improving depression. So elevation, to improve elevation, we have to give inferior glides. So inferior glides means you can stand in this way. Okay, stand by the head of the patient, close to the head of the patient, and then just give inferior glides. Okay, if it is a superior glide means you need to face the patient by the side of the patient, and you need to see the patient face, the patient's face. In that direction, you have to orient yourself. So always remember superior glide to increase the depression and inferior glide to increase the elevation, and then posterior glide and anterior glide also same way. So anterior glide, if you are giving anterior glide means it will cause anterior glide to improve protraction and posterior glide to increase retraction. So use your thumb for this mobilizations. Okay, just because very small joint and very small movements, very small amplitude movements are available. So you cannot expect like big joint movements or that space I told you, right? So between the physiological barrier and anatomical barrier, we have very reduced space. For these things, it's like very like very few spaces allowed. So in that thing, use thumb and don't use body weight. So this is for anterior glide and caudal glide. Anterior glide means from the back to you push it forward. Okay, that is what the anterior glide is. And then caudal glide means you can come this way and then push downwards. Okay, if you want, we will have other video to answer this.
Reduction arthrokinematics consists of a superior roll and inferior glide of the humeral head on the glenoid fossa. Tissues involved include the joint capsule, bursa, and muscles that control motion of the shoulder complex. Joint mobilization forces can be used to help relieve pain or increase mobility. The goal is to cause a change in the tissues surrounding the shoulder complex. To reduce pain, the joint is mobilized using gentle movements carried out in either the very beginning or the mid-range of the available range of the joint. A grade 1 or 2 mobilization is primarily used. This oscillatory motion can help to alleviate pain via pain mechanoreceptor inhibition, a reflex inhibition of the muscle contraction or spasm, or through the promotion of muscle relaxation. To increase range of motion into abduction, the joint is placed in the available range or end range of the joint and into resistance, and then the mobilization is carried out. This motion into the restriction stretches the tissues and helps to break up adhesions. Grades 3 and 4 are primarily used to increase range of motion.
Shoulder can reduce slight flexion, 55 degrees flexion, and slight external rotation for grades 1 and 2. Help take the glenohumeral joint line and slightly distal onto the humeral head. The nerve tension is as close to the joint line as possible. By regular restrictions underneath the articulation, mobilization is applied using body weight to glide the joint in the inferior direction parallel to the joint line. Grade 1 mobilization is gentle, small amplitude oscillation in the very beginning of the available extension. Grade 2 mobilization is gentle oscillation with larger amplitude in the mid-range of the joint. For grades 3 and 4, the joint is progressed towards end range and the desired position. The grade 3 mobilization is moderately sized oscillation of larger amplitude through the available joint range and into the resistance. Grade 4 mobilization, small oscillations at end range and into the resistance. 30 seconds of treatment if tolerated, and immediately reassess pain level or movement to see if either has changed for better or worse. If improvement is noted, continue for 60 to 90 seconds and repeat until there is no further change in pain or review function.
So after the assessment of your right shoulder,
mobility issues moving your arm up like this. So what I'm going to be doing is a treatment that's called an inferior.
And one more thing is, there is no hard and fast rule that you have to stick on to only mobilization. We have like, what I'm saying is, if the problem is because of both joint adhesion as well as soft tissues, means in between the techniques, in between the mobilizations, after completing one set of mobilization, you can go for stretching to the muscle, and then go for mobilization with another grade. Maybe in between the sets itself, like one set means for continuous 1 or 2 minutes, whatever the grade you are choosing and whatever the rhythm, what glide you are choosing, everything completed in that 1 to 2 minutes. That's what we call it one set. After that, you can mix it with the in between the sets. You can give muscle stretching also, muscle stretching, or if you want muscle energy technique or strengthening also, in between you can give strengthening, and then after that you can start the second set. And in between each set there is no fixed rule that sometimes you can combine the one rhythm to maybe in between you can add up the fast one, maybe slow rhythm. If you start the slow rhythm, for some cases you can in between that suddenly you can increase the rhythm of the patient and then reduce it and then check the response. Like that, it is within that within our scope of cautious effects, we can improve it or we can try a new thing. Okay, so maybe if you're stick on to grade 1 oscillation, means within that grade 1 oscillation you can increase like a slow oscillation to, in between that maybe for a very few seconds you can go for fast one and then maintain the slow oscillations, or in between the fast oscillations you can go for in between mild slow one. Okay, like that in between you can give some variations also.
And what this does is it helps you increase your range of motion, also bringing in some nutrients and extra blood flow to help you healing. So because you're not having really any pain anymore, I'm going to go ahead and take the board here and work on some of those. So I'm going to have you lie down on your back for me, please. I'm going to raise the table. Are you comfortable? Good. Okay, so it's really important for you to relax during that. At no point in time you experience some discomfort. Just let me know, okay? Let me take your arm. My arm here, okay?
So palpate the head of the humerus always, that is our as close as the joint surface. Okay, so whenever you do mobilization, make it little as much as close as possible. Okay, so this is the immediate joint surface we have. The head of humerus is the one.
Going to try to do it for about 30 seconds. Good. And you back up. Can you raise that arm up to the side? How do you go? How's that feel? Feels better. Good. It looks like you're getting more range. So I think we're going to go ahead and continue. As much as you can tolerate. No, all right.
Is it clear? Any doubts?
Miss, just now what grade she was doing?
Pardon?
What grade of oscillation was she doing?
She's, I think, grade
Grade
2.
1, 2.
Grade 2. It is easily visible. Whenever it is visible to us means it's maybe grade 2 and 3. Okay, so it is like mild kind of vibration kind of effect. You see that, okay, whenever the patient, whenever any therapist is doing that, and you feel just a mild vibration, that feel is there means then it may be grade 1 or 4. Maybe the that vibration at the beginning of the range means it's grade 1, or if you're going deep into that, deep into the possible space, and then if you're giving at the last degree of range means it's a grade 4. Otherwise, if it is markable movement change is there, then it may be grade 2 or grade 3. Okay.
Okay, Miss.
So one more thing is I want to tell is, so this is our initiation and progression of treatment. Okay, so initial treatment is just begin with sustained grade 2. That's what I told you. In the first day, you check it with the grade 2 joint traction. That is slack up, taken up the slack, or all the tissues should be like, for example, if it is your tissue means, if it is already it is relaxed means, if you are taking all the slacks, this is what our grade 2. Grade 3 means if you are giving the stitch, right? That is the grade 3. So grade 1 is you are not taking up the slack, just movement or traction in the without slacking up or without taking up the slack. And this is what grade 2. And grade 3 is this one. So these are the 3 grades of distraction. Okay, so initial treatment is grade 2. Grade 2 means your tissues, everything is tightened up. That is there, but you don't allow any stretching. You don't feel, the patient doesn't feel any stretching effect. Okay, so this is the initial treatment. After that, check for the response. What is the response? After trying this grade 2 joint traction, whether it is improving or whether it is the same, or whether it is increased pain or inflammation. Day 2, patient response will make you decide the course you have to take. Okay, so is there increased pain or inflammation? So the patient complains that it aggravates, I couldn't sleep, or sometimes it's better in the initial maybe initial 30 minutes. After that, it gets progressed. Like that, the complaint is there means go for grade 1 oscillation in the resting position. So only choose that, because his irritability and severity is high in the patient. Okay, so that is what the problem is. We are just trying our mobilization technique, and the day 2, if the patient complains that there is a pain and inflammation means you need to stick on to just grade 1 oscillation in the resting position. Whatever the allowed, whatever the range they have, you choose only resting position to control the pain. Okay, after that, after few days or after 3 days, or what about the feedback? After the feedbacks, you can go for grade 2 oscillation. Okay, and after that, if it is a better, or the pain is reduced and retained for few days, means you can join this course. Otherwise, you maintain this grade till grade 2 and wait for a few days, and then if it is not suitable, means change the treatment. That's it. Okay, if it is the same response like day 2, if it is after progress, after day 5 also is there, means maybe we need to change the treatment. Maybe you can apply modalities, you can give some rest to the part, or like that, or you can do some other technique, strengthening. Maybe instability would be there, that's why the pain and inflammations are increased. So like that, you can do. If it is like same or better, the pain response is same or sometimes it is improved. After yesterday's treatment, I feel better or I feel relaxed, more convenient it is. Like that, the patient's response is like that, means maybe you can go for sustained grade 2 distraction or glides in resting position. Whatever glide we need. For example, flexion is affected means go for posterior glide. Extension is affected means go for anterior glide. Like that, you can give along with the sustained grade 2 traction, you can glide it in the resting position. Okay, and then if it is same, after that also the progression is the same type of thing, means you can start the active movements. The patient should be involved in the completing the movement. Okay, that is there. If it is the same response, no improvement, means you can ask the patient to move their extremity, more of active exercises and strengthening. So if better, if a patient tells you that it is better in the day 1 of sustained grade 2 traction, you can go for sustained grade 3 techniques. Okay, grade 3 techniques means that is I told you the patient feel the tissue stretch. Okay, grade 3 techniques to increase the joint play. And after that, if gliding in resting, if for example gliding is painful, for example, anterior glide is painful, or for extension, I am doing you anterior glide and it is painful, means we can glide in the painful direction. Okay, posterior glide, try the posterior glide without any use. You can go for gliding in the opposite direction. Okay. So if restricted without pain, okay, so there is a stiffness is there, but pain is minimal. In that case, you can go for till the barrier. Whatever the available range is there, you can go to that end point and then give the traction or mobilization, distraction, whatever it is. You can go for the end range. That's what I told you, the progression to end ranges. You don't need to choose the resting position like frontal plane or the scapular, how to say that, scaption, that angle we don't need. We can go for that up to the end range, and then you can try the further glides and then rotation. That's what I told you. For abduction, you need to do lateral rotation. And for knee joint also we had it, like in the end ranges, we need some kind of rotation to complete it. For example, knee extension. For full range knee extension, we need to do medial rotation of tibia. And for completing the full flexion, we need to do lateral rotation. Along with that, you can, along with the glides, we need to add lateral rotation. Thereby, it will improve the end range flexion. Okay, so always you can combine the rotation prior to any any distraction or traction or glide. Okay, this is actually initiation and progression of treatments.
Glenohumeral mobilization.
Okay, so we're going to have the patient, we're going to do mobilization of the glenohumeral joint, and the open back position is going to be abduction at about 55 to 70 degrees, and it's going to be about 30 degrees of elevation, horizontal elevation. So I'm going to lay the patient down in supine. We're going to do the right side. I'm going to make sure that the patient is close to the edge of the table. I want the joint off of the table. I'm also going to place a towel or some kind of support system, whether it be a wedge or whatever is used in the clinic, underneath the scapula to give stability to the scapula. So as I approach the patient, the first technique we're going to do is distraction. So again, the open kinetic or the open chain for the glenohumeral joint is about 55 degrees of abduction with about 30 degrees of horizontal elevation. Okay. So I want to get my cranial hand.
Okay, so sorry, this is actually resting position.
Glenohumeral mobilization.
55. I'm gonna make sure that the patient or some kind of support
yes.
system, whether it be a
This
wedge.
is what the resting position for shoulder joint. This is the convenient position to start the treatment. Okay.
Or whatever is used in the clinic underneath the scapula to give stability to the scapula. So as I approach the patient, the first technique we're going to do is distraction. So again, the open kinetic or the open chain for the glenohumeral joint is about 55 degrees of abduction with about 30 degrees of horizontal elevation. Okay. So I want to get my cranial hand into the axilla. The glenohumeral joint is positioned where the humerus is on this angle. So I want my distraction force going this way to separate from the fossa.
Because we already know that treatment plane is on the concave surface. It is the same as the concave surface of the joint surface. In this thing, our glenoid fossa. The glenoid fossa is the concave surface, right? The head of the humerus is concave. So the treatment plane is our the direction of the glenoid fossa. In that way, you have to give distraction.
Coming into the axilla with this hand, getting close, get my body in position. I'm going to distract and do a distracting force right there. So my force is going in this direction. This is distraction. Okay. Now, also from this position, I can go ahead and do a posterior glide. Posterior glide of glenohumeral joint is going to be very essential for enhancing internal rotation of the shoulder. So I come in, do my distracting force, move my body into position, come over the top, palpate the AC joint, get to the edge of the acromion, and the lateral side of my hand is onto the humerus. As I'm distracting, I do a posterior glide. Take up the slack, do a posterior glide. Okay. Very good. From this position, we can top, palpate the AC joint, get to the edge of the acromion, and the lateral side of my hand is onto the humerus. As I'm distracting, I do a posterior glide. Take up the slack, do a posterior glide. Okay. Very good. From this position, we can also go in and do an inferior glide. Okay. So I find it easier if you come into this position. And what I'm going to do with an inferior glide, my footwork's important. I want to make sure that my feet, since I'm going to going in an inferior direction, my feet are lining up in the direction that I'm going to go in. So once again, I'm going to get the patient in his open pack position. My caudal arm and hand is up into his axilla, and my superior or cranial hand is up over the superior side of the humerus. I distract the joint, take the slack out, and from this position, I'm going to do an inferior glide. Take up the slack, and right here is my inferior glide. My forearm and body should be pushing in the same direction as the inferior glide. Okay. Next, we're going to do an anterior glide. Backing up, the inferior glide is good for somebody who's having difficulty with abduction. We're trying to get a convexity on a concavity, so we're trying to improve that. So we're going to back up. We're going to have the patient go into supine in order to do a anterior glide, an anterior glide. Okay, so we're going to have him roll over. Again, I want to work my table so that he's around ASIS of the clinician, maybe get a little lower. So this time I'm going to take my towel roll or support system and put it right around where the coracoid process is. I'm going to get the patient close to the edge so that the glenohumeral joint and the humerus is off the edge of the table. Once again, I'm in position. I find the open pack position was about 55 to 70 degrees of abduction with a slight bit of horizontal elevation. And my hands come into the axilla. I do a distracting force, and then I get my thigh in there to hold that distracting force. Come over with my proximal hand, palpate at the AC joint, find the acromion, and the ulnar side of my hand goes to the lateral side of the acromion. And I will do an anterior glide, being very careful, taking up the slack and do an anterior translation. Anterior glide. Notice that the elbow is straight and I'm going in the direction of the forearm. So both hands are going down together. As an anterior glide, this can help to enhance external rotation.
That's it.
The most commonly used of the AP mobilization or AC mobilizations is the anterior to posterior, and second I would say is the caudal. Posterior, frankly, I never use. It's very difficult to get your hands under there, and I'm not going to pretend like I'm good at it because I'm not, but it just really isn't used that much. So that's the one that I guess you're allowed to be kind of lousy at. Okay, so what we're going to do is palpate along the clavicle and find the most lateral point, right, from in there. And what I tend to do is I go then just a little bit medial to that, actually on the clavicle. And the reason why I do that is because it's more comfortable for the patient, but you're achieving the same thing. So let's start with the AP. So I'm going to use my thumbs, here, thumb over thumb, but I'm really using my trunk. Right over the AC joint, just medial to the AC joint, right on the distal clavicle. So you're trying this movement. And if it's ouchy for the patient, move the soft tissue out of the way and try it again. Right? If you use your trunk, it should be less painful than if I do that, right? So if it's all thumbs, it's gonna hurt. So that's AP. Okay. Right in this. So, right. I'm not going to go way down here. That's PI. And then caudal. Also the one for overhead. There is one more end range question. Really, really sore. So if my glenohumeral joint moves, my scapulothoracic, and my AC joint moves aren't getting me where I need to go, then I'm going to look a little bit closer to FC joint. I don't do these as commonly. I usually don't need to. But if someone has a broken clavicle and it's healed, I'm definitely going to start moving the FC joint. All right, so caudal, well, in here, I'm going to do AP first. So thumb over thumb. The phallic, you just want to make sure that you're moving the soft tissue a little bit. And this one, you're not going to feel a lot of movement at all, right, in the SC joint. So you'll feel the most with the caudal and the AP. Cephalic, you're hardly going to feel anything at all. You just want to make sure that you move that soft tissue out of the way so it's more comfortable. Usually will tell my patient, I'm going to place my hands here. If you're a guy working on a female, you might want to put a pillow or a towel roll or something under your hands. Okay, right here. Don't mind, but I try to just keep my hands out of the way. Okay, so scapular thoracic, what I'm going to do is put my hands right underneath the abdomen here. So if someone's really ticklish, towel between my hands and they're stiff and that's all. But what we're gonna do here is just look at how the shoulder blade is moving. Bring her up into elevation, bring it down to straight compression. Retraction, rotation. You're essentially just seeing how the scapula is moving. So if somebody's one that's in an end range motion, you have to make sure the scapula is moving. If it's stuck on that thorax, so depending on where the position is, that's where you can get it. But here you have a much better handle on it than if I'm just back here and everything else is right under the axle and it flows.
Okay, so where actually whenever we are treating for glenohumeral joint dysfunctions or difficulties, you need to check all the three. Along with that, you need to check AC, SC joint, and then scapulothoracic. Sometimes whatever technique you apply on shoulder joint, that is glenohumeral joint, sometimes the problem in the scapulothoracic, that is the elevation, depression, protraction, retraction, and then this medial and lateral rotation of scapula, that can influence your shoulder joint movements. Okay, we call it scapular dyskinesia. Because of that scapula's movement restriction or abnormal muscle imbalances, right? So abnormal muscle balances may cause the glenohumeral restriction. Okay, so we need to check all the three muscles along with the glenohumeral joint. You need to check the AC, SC, and then scapulothoracic. Okay, you actually, I will send the video. You will watch it yourself. Okay, so that's it for shoulder joint. Okay, so shoulder joint on the whole, I will tell you. So you have distraction, and then caudal glide for abduction, anterior glide for extension and lateral rotation, and posterior glide for flexion and internal rotation. Okay, so this is very basic. And then we will have for AC joint, we have anterior glide, posterior glide, and very rarely we can use inferior glide also. And then for SC joint, you have anterior, posterior glide, and then superior and inferior glide. Okay, and then for scapulothoracic, you can mobilize like upward movement, downward movement, upward rotation, downward rotation, and then sideways movement, protraction and retraction. You can move this scapula in all the planes. Thereby, we can improve it. Okay. That's it with our shoulder joint mobilization. Okay, so always start with resting position and then start the grade 2 distraction, and the next day check the response, and thereby you proceed with maybe severe pain means stick on to grade 1, or if it is severe muscle spasm means stick on to grade 2, or if it is only joint stiffness and the pain is there's nothing, the patient doesn't complain of pain, only joint stiffness is there and it is the patient feels same or better, you can go for along with the grade 3 distraction, we can go for 3 and 4, grade 3, grade 4 mobilization. Okay, simple. So that's it for shoulder joint. Let's move on to the elbow joint. Okay. Do you have 5 minutes break? If you want, we will have
10 minutes.
10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Okay. Let's have Okay, 10 minutes break. Just go through it, and if you have any doubts in the shoulder joint, we'll discuss. Okay. So otherwise, we'll follow this elbow and wrist mobilization. Okay, shall we start?
Yes, miss.
Are you all there? Shall we start?
Yes, miss.
Yes, miss.
Okay, thank you. So after elbow shoulder joint, we will now come to elbow and wrist joint. Can you tell me the elbow joint surfaces and how many joints are there in the elbow?
Uh, elbow, elbow joint, radius, concave, capitulum, convex.
Okay, humerus and radius and ulna, right? So these are the bones, and you have humero-ulnar. One is humero-ulnar joint, other one is humero-radius joint. Okay, so other one is radio-ulnar, superior radio-ulnar joint. Okay, so all the three joints are within the joint capsule of elbow joint. Is it clear? Humero-ulnar, humero-radial, and then superior radio-ulnar joint. So three joints are included in your elbow joint capsule. Okay, so what are the joint surface, right? So here you can come to know that. So first of all, we are coming to humero-ulnar articulation. Okay, so humerus with ulnar means in the medial aspect. In the medial aspect only you have ulna, and the thumb side is radius. So for humero-ulnar articulation, you can now come to know that there is a convex trochlea articulates with the concave olecranon process. So we don't have diagrams. So you can see that the trochlea is convex, and then your ulna, the ulnar articular surface is concave. Am I right? So here now you can see that this is whenever you are mobilizing the distal segment, then rolling and gliding is in the same direction because the concave is moving, right? So for improving the flexion, you need to do gliding in the anterior direction. Okay. To increase the extension, you need to glide the you need to glide the ulna in posterior direction. Simple, right? So the concave is there means that is a special thing. It's easy to remember. Okay, so humero-ulnar joint is the concave is distal. Once again. So in this thing, for humero-radial, now you can see that for humero-radial, you have the convex capitulum. That is, the humerus is convex, and then your radial head is concave. Okay, here also the same thing is concave with concave radial head. So here the same thing, the rolling and gliding is in the same direction. So the convex trochlea articulates with the concave olecranon process. So here the resting position you need to know, because for initially for all the treatments, all the mobilization treatments, you have to go for resting position. That is, elbow is flexed to 70 degrees. It is like 90 degree means it's like perpendicular to each other, the forearm and arm. But 70 degree means somewhat like it is beyond that 90 degree. Okay, so elbow flexed to 70 degree and forearm is supinated 10, like 10 degree means mild supination. Okay, because we have 90 degree supination, pronation also, it's a 180 degree movement. So slightly supinated. Slightly supinated means facing the palm facing upwards. Okay, and treatment plane, already in the picture itself, we have seen that whichever the concave surface is, the concave surface is taken as treatment plane. So here also the olecranon process fossa is there actually the treatment plane. That is approximately how it is angled, means it's a 45 degree angle. Yes, right. So the olecranon process, the olecranon process concave surface is angled with 45 degree to the shaft of ulna. So distraction force should be like how to say that, it should be perpendicular to the treatment plane, and gliding should be given in the direction of treatment plane. Okay, after that stabilization. One thing is we all don't one time I told you that the proximal bone can also be mobilized, right? In some cases we can do that, but normally it is easy for us to fixate because it is bigger compared to distal bone. The proximal bones are comparatively larger in size and weight also increased compared to the distal segment. That's why we mostly follow that the proximal segment is fixed or stabilized, and then we are moving the distal one. Okay, very rarely, if needed, we can use. For example, in knee joint mobilization, I told you, you need to fixate the femur and move the tibia. But very rarely, if it is prone lying is difficult, means what we can do is you can fixate the tibia and mobilize the femur. Sometimes it is also effective, but it is very time consuming, as well as it's not economical for us to follow that. Okay, so here also most 90% of time we will fixate the proximal segment and move the distal one. So here also fixate the humerus, again the treatment table, either use assistant if it's there available for you, or you can use belt to hold it, or you can use your other hand also if you're sound enough to manage the both force and stabilization. And or sometimes if no other option, you are also weak and you don't have assistant and you don't have belt, means you can use other side of the patient's limb, like use other arm to support the humerus or stabilize the humerus. That is also we can do. Okay, and then now we are coming to the humero-ulnar distraction and progression. Okay, so first thing is, for whatever joint it is, first thing we have to do is distraction. So indication is testing. Initially, how sound the joint is, how stable the joint is tested by, we need to do distractions. Okay, so testing by initial treatment, sustained grade 2. For every treatment, first day you are trying for sustained grade 2, and then I already told you an algorithm, like protocol for that. Like that we can do that. So pain control. After that, the next day, if pain is severe, means stick on with like grade 1 and grade 2 oscillation. Or if it is stiffness is the problem and there is no pain, or the situation is same, or it is improving, means maybe you can go for grade 3 or grade 4 oscillations. And then, so oscillations means it is our grades to and fro movements. Distractions means you can call it as sustained one. Sustained, and only 3 grades we have. Okay, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. Most commonly, severe pain we can use grade 1. Otherwise, for testing and everything, we can go for grade 2. And in the like more of joint stiffness, the joint is the problem, means you can go for grade 3 distraction, and then grade 3 and grade 4 oscillations. Okay, is it clear? This is something I'm confusing you. Do you want me to repeat again?
Yes, please. Once more.
Okay. So the first day the patient comes to you, use grade 2, sustained grade 2 distraction. Okay. And after that, the next day, check for the response. Check for the response, whether it is painful or the pain is worsened or the pain is same or pain is better. The 3 things you can come to know. Okay. So the pain is severe or the pain is there means just remind for the next 2 days with grade 1 and grade 2 oscillation. That is in the beginning of the range, as well as maybe the large amplitude, but you are not crossing the pain sensation. Okay, you're within that, you are not going beyond any barriers. Okay, that is what grade 1 and grade 2 oscillations. Okay, so that is for severe pain cases. If it is like stiffness is there and pain is reduced, and you want to it's like nothing, the pain is not there, but you have only restriction of movement. In that case, what you have to do is go for grade 3 and grade 4. No pain is there, only stiffness, means you don't have any hesitation. You can go for 3 and 4. Okay, and the distractions also can go for grade 3. That's what I told you. Okay, so no pain, only stiffness is there, means grade 3 distraction and grade 3 and grade 4 oscillations. Okay.
Okay,
Is
miss.
it clear now?
Yes, miss.
Okay. And then the patient position supine with the elbow over the edge of the treatment, always close to the edge. Thereby, we don't have to bend too far. Okay, that is the main thing that asks the patient to come to the edge of the treatment table. And then you need to support the any bony prominences. Like here, we can just give some pad support to the under the olecranon process, and you can rest the patient's distal segments on your shoulder. Okay, thereby allowing the elbow to be in the resting position. You all know the resting position of elbow joint is 70-degree elbow flexion and 10 degrees of supination. Okay, that is the safe for initial treatments. Okay, so after that, after some point, if you're progressing, it means go for end ranges. Maybe in the most of the post immobilization cases, maybe 3 months of bedridden or 2 months of POP application. Sometimes in that case, they may have normal ranges, through ranges or normal, but end range, maybe like last 10 degrees of flexion or last 10 degrees of extension. They have only the very few end ranges may have problem. Most of the cases, that is the situation. I have seen so many cases like after fracture immobilization, the last 10 degrees in either way, in flexion or extension is the problem, means and it is the more dominant is stiffness. Stiffness is the problem, means you can go for end range and then do the distraction and grade 3 and 4 mobilization. Okay, this is what you can support the patient's wrist and forearm under your shoulder. Okay, you can place the weight on your shoulder, and then this is what distraction. Okay, this is distraction force. So always the distraction force is given perpendicular to the direction of the treatment plane. Okay, so that is there. And then the placement, can you see the hand placement? So place the fingers of your medial hand. Medial hand means the hand which is closer to the patient's body. That is what our medial hand. So the medial hand should be over the proximal ulna. Okay, the first thing is you need to place your fingers, right? This is what the first hand that is touching the patient's skin is your medial hand fingers. And then reinforce it with other hand. So this hand is reinforcing, this lateral hand is reinforcing the your medial hand. Okay, and then what you have to do is, like, maybe you can choose whatever the available range, whether it is resting position or in the end range flexion or end range extension, wherever it is available, you can maintain that. And then you can just give some distraction. Apply force against the proximal ulna at the 45-degree angle to the shaft. So this is our distraction forces. So this hand is just stabilizing or giving more support to your medial hand. Okay, so after that, we are having humero-ulnar distal glide. Okay, first one is just a distraction. This is what distraction is. And then next thing is humero-ulnar distal glide. Means after giving distraction, you have to, like, it is somewhat like a scooping motion. Okay, after giving a distraction, that is downward movement, and then little bit upward. Okay, so what is that tells you is just to give distraction and then this way. This is what scooping movement. Okay, more distraction and then apply some upward force. Okay, this is for humero-ulnar distal glide to increase flexion. Okay, it is concave. Concave means anterior rolling. Anterior rolling is flexion. So to improve the flexion, you need to give anterior glide. In the same way, the medial hand over the proximal ulna, and then medial hand means whichever hand which is close to your the patient's body. Because this is medial hand, another one is lateral. So same way, so how you will give distraction, along with that you are giving some upward force or a distal glide, whatever it is, because it is actually distal glide. We can tell it as a distal glide or traction, or we can give anterior glide. Because of that positioning, it looks in this confusion way, but what we are doing is simply just distract it and then give some upward scoop. After that, we are coming to humeroradial articulation. Okay, next segment, we are now coming to the another component, that is the lateral component. This is humeroradial, humero-ulnar is medial one, and then humeroradial is the lateral aspect. Here we know the capitulum is articulates with concave radial head. A resting position for this one, for humeroradial, is different. Elbow is extended. Okay, so you can see that for that elbow is flexed 70 degree and supinated 10 degree. For humeroradial, your elbow is extended and forearm is supinated to the full range. Whatever available range, you have to maintain that. That is a resting position for humeroradial. And the same thing is the concave radial head plane is the treatment plane. Okay, and then here also stabilization, you can fixate the humerus with one of your hands, or assistant is there means you can use them, or belt or is there you can use. So this is for humeroradial distraction. Okay, so for humeroradial distractions, what you are doing is it's like you can use this the same technique for pulled elbow also. Sometimes in the children's, they may get like very early below 7 years of old. They may have some problems with the holding, or some kind of pulling activities may cause the head of the radius may come out of the joint capsule. Sometimes it will happen because the head of the radius doesn't fully ossify in the early ages. In the young age, it is not fully ossified. So there is a greater chance for your radius to be, the head of the radius maybe come out of the joint surface, maybe dislocated. That's what we call pulled elbow. Pulled elbow means you can use this technique to correct it also. Immediately we can correct it using this humeroradial mild distraction. Okay, so patient position supine, and the same with the arm resting on the treatment table. And then what is the thing means, one hand on the stabilizing. So the medial hand is used for stabilization, and then your lateral aspect. Okay, so the lateral aspect, that is the in line with the thumb, should be pulled or distracted. That is very important. A thumb line, you're going to place it on the thumb line. So position yourself on the ulnar side of the patient. Ulnar side means you are in between the patient and his arm. Okay. And then give some mild force. So the mobilizing force comes from this hand placement. Okay, you just distract it. So always make sure that you are grasping around the distal radius. That's why I told you, make sure that if you are doing humeroradial articulation, then make sure that it is in line with your thumb. Okay, so you just make sure if you are palpating it like that, because in the supination and pronation, you may get confused with which one is ulna and which one is radius. So always remember that thumb line. When you trace the thumb to the down, that point is called radius, and place it here. Okay, place it this way and then just pull it. Okay, that is what. And then humeroradial dorsal and olar glides. Okay, simple. Okay. Dorsal means going for posterior glides, and olar glide means pulling it towards you. So whenever you apply, in this direction, it is olar glides. Okay. Whenever you push it downwards, this is dorsal glide. And then this hand is stabilizing one. So your medial hand is the one which stabilizes the one aspect, and then you are giving ventral and dorsal glide, or anterior and posterior glide. Everything is same, but we use different terminologies. That's it. So the dorsal glide is for increasing the elbow extension, and olar glide to increase flexion, right? So rolling and gliding in the same direction. That's why backward glide means it's for increasing the elbow extension, and olar glide means it increase the flexion. So either you can choose sitting or supine lying. Okay. And then the elbow is fully extended because for humeroradial joint, your resting position is elbow extended and supinated at the full range. Okay, so this is what our resting position is. The safe position to perform the techniques are humeroradial, dorsal and polar glides. This is what they are explaining. So maybe you can stabilize the humerus with your hand, that is medial side. Okay, your medial hand should be used, and then use your palmar aspect on. Okay, so like the thenar and hypothenar eminence of your hand is on the ventral aspect, and then the fingers on the posterior aspect of the humeroradial aspect, or maybe the proximal radius. If you want to push it backwards, use the palm of your hand to push it back. And then for ventral, you need to fingers. With the use of fingers, you pull it upward. Or sometimes if you want, you can change the direction also. Change it in such a way that it would be like pushing. Okay, so ventral glide should be given as a pushing type by change your position. Okay, how we can position means you can reverse it. So you can come outward from the patient, thereby your thumb or your thenar eminence can be given for ventral glide. Okay, after that, to reduce the pulled elbow subluxations, you can use this kind of compressions. Compression means you are reducing the joint space. Okay, tomorrow we will complete elbow joint, okay, wrist and hand, and then hip joint, and then ankle. Okay, let's complete it on tomorrow's class.
Okay, Miss. Miss, can you send the slides?
Pardon?
Can you please send the slides, the glenohumeral and the elbow one?
Yeah, I will sure. I'll send it today itself. Okay, that's it for humeroradial compression. Means just you are giving some deep pressure, or you are decreasing the joint space. That's it. Okay, I will show you the videos in the next week's tomorrow's class.
Okay, Miss.
After that, only proximal radial ulnar, distal radial ulnar, and then you have a wrist joint. Okay, so let's wind up. Thank you all. Bye. See you tomorrow.
Hi, Miss. See you tomorrow. Thank you, Miss.